Hi, this is Elliot Coulter from the future. If you've seen other videos, you'll know that I work for Fernwood Press. Just wanted to let you know that this interview was done over Zoom, which is similar to Skype. And that is why the audio is a little off and why at times the video and audio don't seem to sync up. And I apologize for that. But enjoy the video. It's a great interview.
First, it's kind of the idea hits me and I record it, and then a lot of times when I'm walking, I'll listen to the ideas and then have thoughts about how to extrapolate, and then eventually it starts to take shape. And there's a long time between almost finished and completely finished.
Okay.
I really want to let it sit for a while and make sure that it's as good as I can make it. I love children's books. So Winnie the Pooh and Alice in Wonderland and Where the Wild Things Are, those are very real and present for me. So often I'll just think about a scene from one of those. And here's an example. Recently, there was a story in the Washington Post about men in the legislature, I think it was in New Hampshire, who were wearing pearls at a hearing where women were testifying in favor of regulating guns. And this was just their way of showing contempt. But as soon as I saw that, I thought about the walrus and the carpenter, and thinking about the oysters on the beach, and smashing those two very, very different scenarios into each other just gives me enormous delight. So I'll see where that goes. Also, childhood is a time of enormous curiosity and enormous constraint, other people making the rules. And a lot of my poetry has a kind of theme of rebellion. So stepping into a child's world is a way of kind of making space for my little tantrum that turns into a poem. So there's a couple of thoughts about how and why that happens. Yes. Well, the idea, I have some ideas or suggestions about writing and suggestions about getting published. So first, in terms of writing, I think the important thing is to kind of stretch your wings and figure out what you have to say that needs to be said, and find ways to say it that are as economical as possible, and as original as possible. I try to strip out the cliches out of my writing, and I try to strip out excess, unnecessary syllables. So there's kind of an expansion and contraction. It's, finding new directions that a poem wants to go, and then chiseling out all the excess, and then expanding in new directions, and then chiseling. So that's my process, but I think it's just important for a writer to make lots of space, and take the time to get it right, whatever getting it right means.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of getting published, I started sending out my poems to literary magazines about 3 or 4 years ago. And I noticed pretty quickly a difference between the rejections that were, "Thank you for sending us your work. We can't use it. I hope you find someone who will publish it." And on the other hand, there were some rejections that were, "Thank you for sending us your work. We couldn't find a place for these poems at this time, but we hope to see more of your work in the future." So I classify that as rejection and rejection with encouragement. So I've got a list of the magazines that I've submitted to that have rejected my offer with encouragement, and I just keep going back to those. So I guess the heart of that suggestion is don't take the rejection personally. In sending stuff out, you have to be kind of analytical about where is this going to fit. And most magazines, if you look on their website, they'll say, before you submit your stuff to us, read a copy so you'll know what we like. That makes no sense to me. I'm sure there are people who find that useful, but I can look in a magazine and say, I like this poem, I like this poem, I don't like that poem. How does that relate to what I'm writing? I don't know. So that's a mystery to me. It's the afterlife of cola. And I would say that this poem is motivated by a little spurt of outrage. We talk a lot about being a free society, and the choice between Pepsi and Coke is a big deal in a lot of people's lives. So I just kind of took that to the extreme, asking myself, what if the difference between Coke and Pepsi really is the fundamental question for human life? So I kind of took that to the extreme and ran with it. And I wrote this poem as my father was dying. So my father shows up in the last stanza in kind of a wistful way with a wish for more of his wisdom. And he was showing up in almost all the poems I wrote at that time. The afterlife of cola. The nurse leans over my bed and asks, would you like Pepsi in your Coke? I must be dead. She must be an angel waitress, because no place on earth serves both, let alone in the same glass. I float up from the tear-damp pillow through the ceiling toward hazy brilliance. A voice beside me recounts poignant vignettes. Coke bubbles up my nose when I was 4. A shaken Coke geyser in my face when I was 7. An imaginary crush on my 6th grade teacher, who I saw in the teacher's lounge drinking a bottle of Coke with her shoes kicked off. My first date ruined by Coke dumped on lap before the movie started. Coke battered onion rings in the boot camp mess tent. The tipped-over Coke machine in the lunchroom at the plant before the strike. A blur of parental Coke, work Coke, divorce Coke, the joy and panic of solitary vacation Coke. Then 1,000 souls zigzag toward the table with cans of Coke and Pepsi. A solemn man points Coke drinkers left, Pepsi drinkers right. Each cola drinker exits, the slam of doors loud. If I paid attention in high school English, if I went on the Holy Land tour, if I sat with the homeless men in the shelter instead of going home after I slapped bologna between slabs of bread, if I read my father's rambling advice, his schmaltz made me wince, his spelling was quirky, the big band-era love song lyrics looked silly to my Beatles-era eyes. But maybe, deep in Dad's meander, was the answer. My whole life I drank Coke. But is Pepsi the way, Dad?